Hello everyone. The title of today's episode is When Infinity Touches Earth. And so this is a playful view on how the form of man has come to be the form of man. We want to simply see that as we begin to suggest thoughts, words are being spoken, regardless of that projection, your awareness to your moment is your complete awareness. It is your choice. So when one becomes self-aware, they begin to see that the illusions are fading. And when the illusions are fading, there comes the question of what is this existence made of? And what is this really here? And to be honest, you're asking this for nobody else other than yourself. The mystery belongs to the seeker. But do we want to be a seeker for infinity? Or do we want to see that man is a design and he originated from an individuality where at a certain level of its evolution was able to even consider an evolution? The unknown factors of our origination are questions that our whole plane has. So if we were to wonder if every question that mankind had, what would be the question of the planet? Unification is right there with separation. They are not different. They're both aspects of how your presence is self-observed. It's as if like perception was in some way alive. And so you realize that nothing is ever meaningless when you are the origination of the meaning. When you begin to see the value of your life is nothing outside of you, but it is how you are perceiving things internally, you begin to see that it's as if you are wondering about your clarity. And so this clarity makes you question what happens when infinity touches Earth. How does the unknown manifest into a self-observant knowing? And so many people have asked such a question and they have observed it, and it has many endings. That's the thing with the question. Because when the receiver, the person who has the capacity to get many answers, the question is all alone. And so you will begin to see that when you are aware of the subtlety of how mind and body are both relevant to one another and irrelevant, you begin to see that man does not need to be lost in his assumptions of a solid reality. Order becomes only half of the coin. The other half is the lack of order, the chaos. So that means there's a way of hearing my talk which you're linearly understanding, and there's a way which it does not even turn into interpretation. It's just like you as a being are just knowing what I'm saying. There's a transcendental quality to how this existence is present. We must shift our scale. You know, many human beings act tough, but if you act tough in a very mystical way, you begin to see, you immediately become clear who you are. You become aware of the present moment, and you see that your perception does not need to walk into the realms of definition, which can never be fully agreed upon because there's always a new moment of abstraction. Human beings were not designed to argue with one another. That's why we don't like it. It's like naturally, existentially, we're designed not to like arguments because our sense of harmony is not in our individual conflict. Do you realize it? So we don't want to constantly save an individual. We want to increase the state of awareness of each individual so that they know without needing to even interpret something into something, you know? So what that means is when Mr. Within began looking at the nature of thought, he noticed that there's an aspect of it where you can always have an opinion on, and this opinion is coming out of the new moment. It's just like out of novelty is born your moment. And you're kind of being aware of this, and suddenly as you're being aware of this work, it's like that observance has an unborn quality. And so this is where you begin to see that when the object, which thinks he's only considering itself subjectively, is here subjectively, begins to see that objectivity is also keeping it here. So it's like once we see that our eyes are internally maintaining this reality, and there's a factor within this which is externally maintaining reality, it's as if our trust in the opposite of what we thought was the truth was how the scale dissolved to a greater understanding. It's really how you are working with what is real to you. And if you become aware of it, you get a sense of wit that it's not like book smart and it's not like street smart. It's as if it's existentially smart. It's as if your trust in life is taking you to flows which you are manifesting less with ideology but more with actual experience. Many beings come on this plane and they are such conditioned into ideas, it's like they're not completely born, you know. It's as if like you plant the seed, you know, and you begin to observe reality, and so you begin to see that what's happening, you know. You begin to see what's going on with this plant and see, oh my God, there's a bag over it, and the plant is in a sense dying in some way. The bag is the conditioning, and the bag is a choice in which something is not being allowed. What that means is life is not going to be easy. Not everything is going to be allowed at first, but what is allowed is always self-awareness. Nobody can prevent you from it. Even if they put you in a position where you can't physically move, you can see nobody can touch self-awareness. It is that untouched aspect of your experience which is omnipresent. And these are not just words, guys, because this must be experientially obtained. And when it does, you begin to see that it was never about the words. There was a reason there was something like Bhakti Yoga. That in the sense that they were saying that not everyone needs to go with their logic and teachings. It's about devotion. It's about existential communication. So what that means is you can begin to see like this very peaceful and old Zen master standing beside, let's say, the most youngest academic and most brightest mind. You begin to see, and if you saw that if this was their last moment, which one was living at a greater quality of life, you begin to see it's not about showing off to a sense of other, which is coming from our sense of self. Man must not think that he is something that is shaky. If you bring that ideology, it's not that you're going to shake, you're an eternal view. It's just that your manifestation is going to be slow. Always let action flow, regardless of what's happening, because action it's a stream of happening on its own. When a human being talks about consciousness, it will always be that which is not the noise. It would be the opposite of where the definitions of our solidity are coming from. And so the thing is, we need to see what is caring for what. Because when I look at the depth of these views, in which one aspect of human civilization is looking at the world as if it's completely objective and this is it. And there's another aspect, I think very small portion, but now I think it's pretty much grown because of globalization, But there's a certain portion of human beings who are observing it, and they are dissolving into the experience that is the keeper of the plane of existence. Do you realize it? And when that happens, you begin to see that science cannot enhance after some point, because if it does, it must break its axioms that are keeping its limitation there. Because omniscience never needed the concept of truth. Truth is a man-made concept. And so you will begin to see that in any religious context, I believe, Mr. Within finds that you need to see where the value is. Because the value in the story is to suggest the quality of experience of the being, rather than the actuality of how the cosmos was made. To be honest, no human being should have a comment on any religious text. But unfortunately, we can't keep our mouths shut. Because everything is kept, it comes here and it goes. We need to recognize that the temporal reality is not something to hold on to too much. Sometimes you have moments in life where you have a problem and it's been suggested, and gosh, you've been suffering with something in the past. Let's say when you were, 10 years old, you had a problem, right? And now let's say you've grown older, and so in the context of that problem, it hadn't come up, but suddenly, let's say you've gone into a situation, and in some situation, suddenly something happens, and you begin to see that same situation comes where the problem was, but you have suddenly grown into a greater ability where the answer is very simple for you. It's as if that moment where you realize you have legs and you're like, gosh, I could walk right now, and you just walk, So it's simply an understanding that outside of conceptual existence, not necessarily outside, but in the observance of conceptual existence, man finds himself in an acknowledgement of all polarity within an unspeakable moment of just presence. And presence is an infinite source of poetry, and you begin to see this in many of the texts from ancient times. I mean, it's very clear. It's a collective conscious view. Let us see it this way, that if there was nothing, that before there was life, before there was anything else, let us say if there was nothing, we would see that that nothing was kept by something. And so our acceptance of, for example, the light being heaven and the darkness being hell is the elusive position and placement of a shape that never was alive. Our abstraction is a phenomena which, in our exploration of it, is opening up the meaning of the cosmos for us. You cannot be asked, who are you, and not just have a deep, thought about it. It was actually something like that that really made me think deeply. Because the basis of illusion is the forgetting of direct experience, which is always beyond the illusion. There is an aspect to your experience which, if it is unknown, you're closer to perceiving beyond. the frameworks and programs of how reality is. See it like this. You're a human being. After a certain amount of living, you realize you've cultivated a certain amount of self-awareness to what experience is, what life is, what awareness is. Now, you will begin to see there will come a moment where you will in an instant acknowledge everything you know in such a greater infinite spectrum that you will begin to see it's empty. Do you know? So it's that moment where you thought you just did the final task required and you're like, gosh, there's like 1,000 more of the same task that needs to be done. 10,000 more of the same task that needs to be done. So you begin to see that it's like one of those things that you are guided by the emptiness in which the clarity of manifestation is originating from. For if you forget that which is here, you will not see the eternity within your disposition, which is that moment where man steps into the grave. Self-awareness is when infinity touches earth. And so the form of man is beyond any elusive end. Much blessings and namaste.